Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and this is going to be a voiceover of this training session that I went through, which is actually a re-upload of the video that I previously uploaded a few days ago, which was me doing a back and biceps hypertrophy training session. In that video, some of you, thought it'd be a good idea if I did a voiceover for that, for the training session to explain, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And yeah, I thought that was a good idea. And here it is. This is going to be exactly the same video, just me talking over, commentating what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So this was a back and biceps training session, quite clearly. We had in this session 4 sets of landmine rows, 4 sets of lat pull downs with a wide grip, and I think 7 sets or so of bicep curls. In this case, we did cable bicep curls. And the landmine row and the lat pull down were around, they were meant to be done at around 1 to 2 reps in reserve, whereas the curls were supposed to be done at around 0 to 1 reps in reserve. And the reason for that is because the more compound type lifts are going to be more taxing on the body, and therefore we want to leave a few more reps in reserve. And generally, we're using heavier loads with those exercises too, the compound lifts. So we don't need to take them generally quite as close to failure because according to, the theories of motor unit recruitment, we're going to activate the highest threshold motor units sooner in those sets because we're not using really light weights and we're not using super high rep ranges. Whereas isolation lifts, when you're training in higher rep ranges, probably want to take them closer to failure. Not only because they are just less taxing and you can just get away with it, and also because it's enjoyable, but also because generally if we're using lighter loads, we want to take it close to failure to make sure we are recruiting all muscle fibers and therefore, getting the best hypertrophy stimulus we can. So I've already talked over most of these sets, but this is the fourth set coming up here. But what I'm going to say is probably going to apply to both the landmine rows and also the lat pull downs. But basically what you can see is each set I'm starting off with a lighter weight and actually increasing the weight each set. And I don't think this is, anything special or the best way to do things. This is just a way that I've been playing around with the last maybe 8 to 10 weeks. I'm just playing around with different loading styles and seeing how they feel and what sort of response they give me. And basically my rationale for doing this sort of loading style where I'm actually starting with a lighter load and increasing throughout the sets, there's 2 primary reasons for that, for at least theoretical reasons behind me doing that. So first is simply from a joint tolerance perspective. If I am fatiguing myself earlier with lighter weights, it means as I get to use heavier loads as the weight increases, I can't use as heavy of loads on my heavier sets, which still allows me to train close to failure and take the muscle, maximally stress the muscle by taking it close to failure. But because I'm already, pretty fatigued from the sets I did before with lighter weights and higher rep ranges, I can't lift as heavy loads, and that's just going to be less overall stress on the joint. So it allows me to really, stay a little bit healthier while still training close to failure. And since, I have no strength goals, it's pure hypertrophy training. I don't really, if I can train with lighter weights, in my opinion, that's a win. It doesn't mean this is the way to train or the best way to train, or you want to avoid, getting stronger. But, as long as we're taking each set fairly close to failure and making sure we're keeping that tension on the target muscle, then that is the most important thing. And whether we do that with, ascending loading styles or descending loading styles or keeping this weight exactly the same each set, it doesn't matter as much. What's more important is that we're using, appropriate technique and we're taking each set close to failure. So obviously with the first few sets, the weight was lighter for both the landmine row and the lat pull down, as we can see here, which means I was using higher rep ranges. And I think the first set of these lat pull downs, I did about 15 or 16 reps, something like that. And now I'm increasing the weight each set. This is the third set now. So I'm probably here doing around, 10 to 12-ish reps. So with lat pull down, I don't really like to drop below around 10 reps. I think it feels good, at least feels best for me, in the 10 to 15-ish range, around there, maybe even a little bit higher. So basically the way I am determining my load for the next set is by how many reps I do. So my rest between these sets is not that high, maybe 2 minutes rest, 1 to 2 minutes rest between sets. So if my performance drops below around 10 reps, that's when I know, okay, that weight is probably heavy enough, and let's either keep that weight or back it off. So if I end up getting 9, 8 reps, something like that in a set, I'll probably back off the load. And so here in the fifth set, if you've been paying attention, I think the first 4 sets were increases in weight, and now this is a decrease in weight from here, because I think I got maybe 10 or 9 reps on that last set. So I've dropped the weight to allow my rep ranges to be, back up above 10 reps. And I believe on the last set, which were on the 6th set, that was the same. I did the same thing. I dropped the weight again. And that's again to allow me to train in higher rep ranges. And generally the last set of most exercises, I like it to be a lighter load so I can, pump out higher reps and really take it close to failure. In terms of my technique here, I don't have much time left on this exercise. It's the last set to talk about it, but I think the main thing is to not really yank the bar down as fast as you can. You have to control the concentric tempo on a lat pull down, because if you end up going really fast at the top, you end up just gaining too much momentum, so that at the bottom position, it's just sort of carried through with momentum without really the lats at the back actually necessarily being under the highest stress possible. So I think for the lat pull down, controlled tempo, not only for the eccentric, but also for the concentric. And I found that is helpful the weight has to be, you have to drop the weight a little bit doing that to keep the form strict, but I found that's a good way to get a good stimulus on the back. Now, to finish off this session, we had, I think, 7 sets of cable curls, and these were all done with very short rest periods, and these are all taken very close to failure. So on these ones, I am doing a descending sort of loading scheme, where the first set is the heaviest set, and then each set I'm basically taking 2.5 kilos off the stack, and then basically going straight into the next set. I'm only giving myself about 20-30 seconds rest between these. And I think I've left some footage of I've left the camera just rolling, so you can actually see how much rest is in between these sets. And there's 2 reasons for me doing this. Again, I don't think this is the best way to train. This is just a way to do it. But what this allows me to do is basically, number 1, it's time efficient. So it's basically allows me to get through 7 sets in a very short amount of time, maybe only 10 minutes total. And then also, the other thing is, again, lower joint stress. So if I'm giving myself short rest periods, I can't use as heavy loads, but I can still train close to failure. So I'm getting a good stimulus to the biceps or to whatever muscle you're training without using heavier loads. So that's less stress on the elbows, because I know historically for me, biceps are one of my weakest muscle groups. And if I try to increase the volume too much, I end up getting irritated elbow joints. So if I'm doing straight sets, that tends to happen. But if I'm doing these more metabolite style techniques with my biceps, my elbows don't get nearly as irritated, because, the weights are just simply lighter. So stress in the muscle, but, less overall stress on the joints. So fourth set here, the weight is, very light now, but my biceps are very fatigued because of the short rest periods. So I'm not going to get too many reps, but I'm still taking each set pretty close to failure to maximize motor unit recruitment. Make sure every single motor unit is being recruited and trained. This sort of strategy as well, this metabolite type techniques, only really work for me in my experience with isolation lifts. If I try and do a metabolite style, any sort of metabolite style training technique with compound lifts, I find that just my cardiovascular system gets too fatigued and my performance and just even the sensation of contraction and the entire training stimulus and technique goes down pretty quickly. So I don't think it's the best thing to do for heavier compound lifts, but for isolation lifts like biceps, triceps, calves, things like that, where there is low cardiovascular demands, these techniques can be a great way to make your training time efficient and also reduce overall stress on the joints if you're running into issues there. On that note, I don't think I'm undecided on my opinion about this, but I would say overall from the research, generally longer rest periods are more hypertrophic per set, which means that if I actually did allow myself to rest longer, it may be a slightly better stimulus to the biceps, but it probably wouldn't. Basically, I'll be limited in my volume because once again, my joints get too taxed and they'll get irritated, so I won't be able to do as many sets. So it's sort of a trade-off there between quality and quantity, and I think the trade-off is a net positive for some of these isolation lifts, whereas for more compound lifts, it might be better to focus on the quality and not do quite as many sets. Again, there's no best way to train. This is just my opinion, or not my opinion. This is just how I'm currently doing my training, and I'm always changing things around and looking for the best way to train specifically for myself. So here's the last set of curls. Not going to be able to get too many reps. Biceps are crazy fatigued. Lots of metabolite accumulation, but I'm still trying to keep form as strict as possible.